easily. I move my hat.
You're good. You're good. You can start.
You say when.
When?
Hello, everybody. We're testing to see if you can hear me. Jesse's coming running right back. I have the most incredible family. All of them had to be in different places, but Jesse was able to make it. Jesse, thank you. And now I have sunglasses, and I'm wearing the hat because there's such a glare here, and I wore it when we were in the Lower East Side, and I decided Eileen took such incredibly good photographs that I can keep this during the summer. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Somebody say yes.
Yes.
Somebody did say yes?
Yeah, you're good.
Who was it?
It's not.
Whoever said I'm grateful, okay? We've had all kinds of issues happening today. My glasses fell, and the screw got loose, and before Joni's little dog, Willie, got my glasses. Jesse rescued them.
Oh, did the
But
lens
they just fell out again. But I won't need them now. Okay? Tomorrow we'll go to Dr. Barry and have them put in correctly. Okay, shall I begin? Jesse posted the story that I have on my wall. Let me do something. Let me talk to you about that painting. But before anything, let me talk to you about Orchard Street. On Saturday, we met, my son Ken drove me into Manhattan. And we met Eileen and Paula there. Eileen does documentaries and is a filmmaker, and wonderful Paula as her assistant, even though she's a social worker in real life. But they've been lifelong friends. And Kenny had wanted a long time ago for us to take the painting reproductions or photos and go to the spots on Orchard Street and the Lower East Side where I had painted and see the enormous difference that had taken place. So Eileen took wonderful photos, but there were so many of them and we haven't had time to really go through them. So we're going to figure them out and you'll see them next week. But until then, I want to read this to you. Okay? On the drive home with Ken from Orchard Street, I felt overwhelmed with emotions which I could not understand. I had to sort out what was in my memories. The streets of Orchard Street, filled with crowds of people from all walks of life, from all ethnic groups, the large signs and open businesses, and then to understand the huge differences from what I had just seen. Now I had seen empty streets, closed and deserted buildings, few people walking, broken bottles and litter. Where had everything I remembered gone? Perhaps COVID had closed businesses, but that was right now. But what I saw were years of neglect. This was the slow but sure deterioration of a part of a civilization that I had once been a part of. When and how did it disappear? I took a long while to dwell on this, but I kept coming back to a question which my new friend, quotation, Linda asked, why the Lower East Side? Why Orchard Street? You never lived there. You were not born there. You've painted so many parts of the city. Why is this the place where you did so many paintings? What was the reason? I don't know. Why on that day when my daughter drove us over the Williamsburg Bridge and I saw the Muscat store on the corner of Orchard and Delancey, and I said, could you pull over here? And she did. For me, my entire life changed. Every week for years, I came back in the early mornings and sat in those streets for hours and was accepted as if I had always been a part of that world. And now I have an answer to why Orchard Street. We have a friend, Tom, who once explained to me that the space we live in contains wirings which we cannot see. But those who discovered their existence, they gave us the Morse code, telephones, the internet, cell phones, and TV, and who knows what other gifts they will give us in the future. As for what I am aware of, but have not yet explored, are strings in the universe which try to connect us to places and people which tempt us to connect with each other. If we listen, what happened to the paths we chose to follow? The string I followed led me to painting the Lower East Side of New York City from 1973 until my last painting, so many years later, of the Henry Street settlement. And now I know why. The unseen strings which we feel around us saw the corner of Orchard and Delancey and prompted me to say to Joni, could you pull over here? Dogs sniff each other and they find out who the other one is. We can't sniff each other, we get arrested. But there is something unseen that connects us with people and places. It had me record a period of time which needed to be recorded, a period of how America became the miracle that it once was, and perhaps will never become again. I went through my records. The first story that I wrote of Orchard Street was of the first painting of that corner of Orchard and Delancey. And do you know what I wrote? Listen to this. In my first story, written in 1973, I had written these exact words. This is a city which never stands still. Neighborhoods change and children lose their roots and often their cultural identity. It can happen gradually. Somewhere across the world, a people become uprooted, and slowly they filter into this city. It can happen quickly. Suddenly a bulldozer rips down a tenement, and the street becomes one of homes for the wealthy. Shifts can happen overnight, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, you might be there to record them. It happened to me on Orchard Street. I'm writing this for my Facebook broadcast on June 28, 2029. What made me write those sentences in 1973? Was it meant for me to do a history of a place which formed America? I would like to ask you, what ties you emotionally to any place? And can you explain it? Why Orchard Street? I established a full life there. If you read my website, which my grandchild Jessie did for me, and you read the stories, you will see that I was belonging from the moment I came to that corner and accepted as part of them. You know, if you have children and they seem bent into one direction, listen to them. Who knows what directs them? Even if it doesn't earn a living. I never thought this would for me. And yet it reached a point when I had to stop selling because I don't have a single painting of the Orchard Street series. They were all moved before I even finished them. Why? I was meant to be here, and I was meant on that Saturday, the 26th, to meet Eileen and Paula, to have Ken drive me there, and above all, to meet Ed again. Ed Litvak owned, I don't know if he still does, we didn't get to that topic, of the lowdown, which became my history whenever I had a question to ask. I'll speak of him another time, but he'll be in the painting you'll see next. Okay, let me go to the next thing. I would like to speak a little bit of the forward building, okay? I'd like you to read the story, but if you can't, let me just give you a briefing. Let me take off my sunglasses because the glare isn't bad anymore. And with dark sunglasses and broken regular glasses, this is going to be much easier. In 1973, I began to paint the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Now 5.5 years and 31 paintings later. Okay, now it's 102 paintings. I realized that I have been watching the changing of one era into another. You know, it was an area at that time of a lot of Orthodox Jewish people. And one approached me and said, "You're Jewish?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "And your husband lets you sit on street corners? On a Friday morning, you should be home baking and preparing for Shabbos. How come?" And I said, "It's okay with my husband." And he didn't believe me. But then one day he saw a Hasid. Those of you who are not Orthodox Jewish, Hasidim, a very religious branch of Judaism. He saw them asking to be painted into my painting. But that was a long time later, because remember, each painting took me a long time. And when he saw me putting them into the painting, he said, "Could you put me in too?" But by then, I had very little room, so I've had to put him all the way in back. But he's in there. And then, if you read it, everybody spoke to me. But one thing I want to tell you, which I didn't write about, there was one man who, you see, the park that I was painting had a lot of tough stabbings and things happening there, but not when I was there. That happened at night. Or nobody told me about it until I would come back the next day And then they would tell me who got killed and who got stabbed. But there was one man who always used to go watch me put my things into the van and watch me. And he stood there at the van until I left again. He was watching that nobody would take anything or bother me. Years later, when I was painting Wall Street, this well-dressed man came over to me and he said, "Do you recognize me?" And I said, "No." And he said, "By the Forward Building, when you painted the park. Do you remember the man who stood there and watched over your van?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "That was me. And I'm back again in the world I belong to." To me, that's the story of this painting. There's always one thing I pick which defines an area for me. And he made it. From somebody who hung out in the park, he still became somebody who watched over me, and somebody who belonged to a different world and found his way back. That's why I love that building. Okay? You can read the rest of it and the other thing. Let me just check my watch. Oh, I have time. Okay. I'm going to read something which is very flattering. So it's a little embarrassing for me to read it, but I have to. So this is difficult for me, but I'm going to do it. Eileen wrote about our trip to the Lower East Side. Okay, this is embarrassing. Jesse, if I wouldn't make you miserable, I would have you read it. Okay. The Lower East Side with Hedy Pagromansky. Venturing to New York City from upstate on the warm summer day, heading to meet Ken and Hedy and Ed. Excited to meet Hedy on her beloved Orchard Street. I love Orchard Street so much. And anybody who knows me knows that to me it is so special. We met at the site of painting number 1 and 3, highlighting Moscott's eyewear store. Right away, the streets came alive. What I must tell you is they moved it across the street. When Joni and I came down from the Williamsburg Bridge, and I said, "Joni, pull over here." That was in front of Moscott's. Suddenly, Moscott wasn't there. It had moved across from the Delancey. My spot was gone. If they would have been there, I wouldn't have stopped. Because it was that corner that said, "Here." So anyway, in the films you will eventually see, because Eileen and Paula took a lot of films, but we have to get Jesse to eventually sort them out. Because there's so many of them with me wearing this hat, and I don't want the whole film to be about me and the hat. Okay. Hedy's enthusiasm fueled this. Her smile illuminated the setting. Okay, I'm embarrassed, but still. I did smile a lot. I was so happy. Her beloved East Side, Lower East Side. She searched the landscape for the familiar sights. Often alighting on a realization. There's Bekenstein. I have to tell you about Bekenstein. Years ago, when I lived in Oceanside, and I did not know about Facebook or anything which was social media, people contacted me and said, "There's somebody on Facebook trying to find you." What is Facebook? I don't know. And I received a letter from a man, his last name was Moskowitz, and his first name Joel. And I read it, and he's from the Bekenstein family. And he wrote the whole history of how he worked there and about the Bekensteins. So I used that, and I believe it's painting number 15. Am I right, Jesse? I think so. Whatever it is, it's very special. And that's how I discovered social media. Okay? By the way, we're going to meet on Orchard Street after we figure out how to do the next program. And I'm going to contact him because he's in Florida, but maybe he'll come, because that street belongs to him. Even though that street is now deserted. There is a Bekenstein sign, but I don't know if it really belonged on that building or if the building moved, because that street is deserted. It's no longer what I remember. Okay? Okay. My Paula listened attentively as Hedy recalled the great and marveled at the present as I tried to capture the day from every angle with my camera. Ed, my glasses are broken, that's why I'm stumbling with this. Ed, our historian, gave us his clear thoughts into what was then and what is there now. We moved through the streets as Hedy told us stories about the people and places she longed to capture and celebrate with her paintings and her presence since the early 1970s. Her infectious smile, brought looks of curiosity. When we told them they were speechless, it seemed everyone just wanted to be in her presence. Everyone wanted to feel her joy, and they did. Hedy lit up Orchard Street that day. She lit up Delancey and Rivington and East Houston streets. We went from give yourself a gift one day and eat there. We are going to go again. And when we go, we will invite everybody, because we want it to be a happening of celebrating when America welcomed foreigners. You see, to me, one of the most important places is going to be painting number 88. So you have a long time to wait. But I got a letter from the Henry Street Settlement if I would be willing to do a painting of their place. And I had often passed by and never wanted to paint it because it was so clean and beautiful. It didn't look as if it would disappear. And I only wanted to do the things which needed to be remembered. But the Henry Street Settlement still does this. It takes immigrants and teaches them trades and teaches them the language and teaches them how to survive. I can't wait to do number 88, but you've got a long way to go. Okay? Why don't I go now? Let me just look at my list, because I want to be efficient. Here's the Forward Building. Here's Eileen's story. Here is my story, and here's the list. Okay. Is there a place in your life where the emotional impact of what it means surpasses anything you can say. I would love if our speaking on Facebook includes you. It doesn't have to be the Lower East Side. It can be a person. It can be a place. But try and explain the little strings that hover where we don't see them, that lead us to specific people and places. Dogs do it by sniffing. Let's do it with words. Okay? Now, let's go to this painting. Let me take my time. Okay, thanks to Jesse, I can do this painting. When I read about the UFOs, which had been buried for years, there was a time when it all made headlines, and then government decided it should be secret. And suddenly we're speaking of them again. And I thought, if they are from different hemispheres, what will they think of us? They'll hear of the murders and the prejudice and the ugliness that newspapers write about. But nobody writes about the greatness. And I started to think of the people I have met on Orchard Street, at the Stock Exchange, at the plaza, wherever I painted, and in my neighborhood. And I thought, if the UFOs are from somewhere else, okay. But what if it's just for the next generation? Let me do a painting of kindness and do the people who are really kind. Not because they do favors, but because there is something within them that makes them watch out for somebody else. And so I went down to the boardwalk. Jesse took me to the boardwalk because there's ocean, and because there are people with food trucks and people partying. And he took wonderful photos for me. And the first people I'm putting in are those who already sent me photos. And that's Steve and his wife Ellen. The only problem is I can't put people in until I establish the perspective. Okay? I am going, Jesse, can you show this photo? That's going to be that building.
They can see it. They can see it.
They can see it? Okay. That's going to be that little building over there. Because I found out when I painted, I had to do one thing which looked exact, so that people, they could point to it when people said, oh my God, what's that? I could say, eventually, I'll do details. That's what a finished part looks like. And Jesse took this, which means I have to begin to measure. Because when I looked at it, Jesse took a few photos. You see, this is what I would like to tell you. Nothing can stop you. In my case, not driving was the biggest thing. I cannot drive anywhere. So I must depend upon others. I cannot have people come to me and pose for me. So I must have them send me photos. And Steve and his wife Ellen sent me the first photos. As I get the rest, I first have to do my perspective. Let me tell you about this. His name is Mike, the man who drives it. It's an incredible place. It sells, well, we bought, in my case, I bought a smoothie, which was a mashed banana in a blender with blueberries on top. And Jesse bought a smoothie, which was what?
Mango, pineapple.
Mango, pineapple, and something. And it was wonderful. And I'm not going to mention names unless I get permission. But the guy who's going to be painted here with his head sticking out also wanted to be an actor. And he became one. But he also does this in order to support his family. And whoever allows me, I will give the name. But otherwise, Eric went with me. My husband who passed away about 5 years ago. He went with me to the Lower East Side. And when I was painting, because I wasn't strong enough to do the driving and sitting on sidewalks for so long. And we passed by an old tenement, and he said, "You're dying to paint that, aren't you?" And you've heard that story before, but remember, I'm the grandmother type, which I really am. And you will hear the same stories over and over again. Get used to it. And he said, "You're dying to paint that, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, but we can't. I don't have the strength anymore." And he said, "If I would do the driving and the carrying everything, would you be willing to do it?" And I said, "Eric, you are 89 years old. You can't." I think it was 89. And he said, "I can always stop. We can try." And we did. But whenever somebody stopped by and said, "Could she put me into the painting?" he said, "Only if you give a story of how you fit into this." So everybody who will be in here is not going to be in until I get a story. Okay? And I have such a list of people who are enormously kind, who are going to be in there. So don't think if you're going to be kind to me that I can put you in. If you've already been in a painting, I cannot. Because I've painted, I guess, a few thousand real people already. Right, Jesse? He's the one who did the website, so he knows. And what I'm going to do, I have to wait for this to dry because my measurements are quite off. As you can see, this is the only one that will work because on some of the others, Jesse stood a little to this side. And so there's a different angle. But I do want you to know that whoever designed this didn't place this right in the middle. And my choice is, what do I obey? And I guess I'll not place it exactly in the middle because we're human. Even engineers do something wrong. Look at the building that collapsed in Florida, right? I think I don't have more, just 1 minute, right? I love you all, and thank you for being my family on Facebook. Do you know that I now have a Facebook family in so many countries in Europe? Kent, you were the one who was my first one. And please write to me, and we'll read it all out loud about what connects you emotionally to something. And if this begins to be enlarged, we will do so. But at the moment, I'm seriously wishing that we could begin at 7:30 because it is so difficult for my family to be here. How does one go about that? Could I just say it right now?
We'll discuss it.
Jesse said we'll discuss it. I love you all. Goodbye and thank you.